Would you rather talk about death or politics?
Death.
Welcome to the 9th episode of Quick to Listen. That was me and vocalist, new music composer, and Grammy nominee Theo Bleckmann. We did talk about his positive approach to death, the limits of language, the influence of his immersion in collage and ice dancing on his musical aesthetic, and at the end we get to hear his reaction to seeing George W. Bush's paintings for the first time. It's a wide-ranging conversation with a really smart, insightful guy. I hope you enjoy it. But first, let me thank you all for listening. Quick to Listen is like a guerrilla, one-man version of Meet the Composer. I love a composer, or a musician, a band leader, and I reach out to them and we talk. I also record analyses. I'll be doing In Rainbows by Radiohead soon. Because it's a one-man operation, I haven't been able to put up a website yet, but that'll be coming, and I also would like to put up at least partial transcripts of our episodes. I think the interviews are a valuable resource. I think we go more in depth than almost any show can do because our orientation is not promotional in nature. It's about discovering the worldview and the value systems of the artists. I'd like to solicit your input. Is there any musician who you would love to see profiled on the show, whose work is fascinating to you and you think could use a greater exploration? Send an email to qtlpodcast@gmail.com. That's qtlpodcast@gmail.com, or send us a message on Facebook. I am particularly becoming embarrassed at the paucity of female musicians that I've had on the show. I'm aware of it, and I'll be trying to address it. But neither am I gonna not interview a cool male musician who I know. So the next few interviews will also be with males, unfortunately, but please send me your suggestions, male or female. So here it is, Theo Bleckmann. I joined him in his Wall Street apartment last week.
Handwritten notes, how antique.
Yeah.
Nice.
Writing is rewriting. That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Bleckmann, for being here.
Thanks for having me. You can call me Theo.
Okay. I want to jump right into talking about one of your specific pieces, Happiness.
Mm-hmm.
It has two parts. The first part has a preoccupied quality, and it's asking,
happiness is blind and mercurial, as it only comes in moments, and I ask myself, why is that, or why isn't?
It's analyzing and stuck on what happiness is. Then it transitions pretty swiftly with the line, all I know is it's got something to do with me and you. And then it goes into this second half that's wordless.
Mm-hmm.
That's the half that feels happy to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I think words are often in the way of feelings. And so for me to express that happiness, I wanted to make it just about the melody and the rhythm and the joy of the, intervals and all that stuff. So the beginning, yeah, it's quite, it's more like pondering, like, how can I put happiness into words? Ultimately, you can't. And the idea for the piece came about just realizing how random happiness comes over me. Like how I sometimes have no control over when I feel happy. I can set the groundwork. I can, plant the seeds for there to be some happiness. But ultimately, I could have everything and feel cranky, or I could be, like I always say, in a parking lot in Akron, Ohio, somewhere in some crappy hotel, and suddenly I feel completely happy. So it's not a constant happiness. I think we are obsessed with being constantly happy or feeling that that's the goal, but just accepting that sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not, sort of the idea behind this piece.
There's a sense of, in the second half of happiness, of giving into it. It's rollicking, like you're being almost pulled along on a ride, I feel. Mm-hmm. Is that a fair reading of that vocal line?
That's a beautiful reading. Yeah, I think that it also the moment where you realize, well, happiness also happens between people, or happens because I love this person, or I am a friend of this person, or something that happens in between, two people, out of which then, the melody, the wordless melody happens.
In your latest album, a collection of Kurt Veill adaptations with the Julia Hülsmann Quartet, you sing Great Big Sky, the fish don't do no wonderin', the birds don't ask no why, but man keeps frettin' and a-wonderin' until they come to die. And I could name other things that you've chosen to adapt that have a similar message on that same record. A Clear Midnight, title track, it's a Whitman line.
Yeah.
This is thy hour, O soul, thy free flight into the wordless. Away from books, away from art, the day erased. The lesson done, the fully forth emerging silent gazing.
You just seem confident in this, and confident that it's a search that could go on till the day we die.
Well, it is. I am very confident in that. I think that happiness, or the search for, whatever you want to call it, is just, has hills and valleys. And to know that when you're in a valley, that there will be a hill where you can see, you're standing on top of the world and you're truly happy, or you feel fulfilled, or you feel that you're doing the right thing. That is not a constant state of being. That would be completely ridiculous to expect that. Sometimes you just have to, clean the bathroom, or you have to do stuff that you don't want to do, and that's part of the hills and valleys. And sometimes you're very happy cleaning the bathroom, That's what I was trying to say earlier. You don't know when it's going to happen. When you feel fulfilled, you don't feel fulfilled necessarily by the things that you think make you feel happy, or that might give you happiness. I think happiness lies in the most unexpected areas of being, Could be anywhere, basically.
And you don't know where you are. We can't play it because it's not released yet, but you did a gorgeous adaptation recently at the Stone of a a Zen poem. I don't have it on. It's silly to
be sad.
You're not moored yet.
Yeah.
So you're in a boat that hasn't even reached where it's going yet.
And you
keep
constantly
moving.
Fetching. Yeah, exactly.
Even if it's fall.
Even if it's evening, even if it's fall. Yeah. I mean, that's, all the wise poetry or the wise words of the world really end up in a similar place. So it's, whether you take a Sufi poem or a Zen poem, or, you take European poetry or other spiritual writings, they all come to similar conclusions,
So why don't most people get to that conclusion?
Because it takes a lot of work. It takes, it takes discipline and daily work you can't just say that, you can't just, you cannot only tell people something. They have to experience it and they have to live it.
Speaking of discipline and daily work and flowing and keeping moving, I'd love to talk about your experience as an ice dancer.
Mm-hmm.
I know it was just for a brief part of your life in your teenage years, but you did it competitively.
Yeah.
And I hear it in your music, in your aesthetic. I could share how, or do you hear the connection?
I want to hear. This is interesting.
Well, there's the quality of technical excellence that you have as a singer, and welcoming scrutiny and this vulnerability. You have performed for many people a cappella, just standing as a lone figure on stage, just like an ice dancer. And that, which I'm sure has made you contributed to you being aware of how much a single figure can do. I've seen you perform, and you've rotated on stage,
mm-hmm.
and
mm-hmm.
Gotten a tremendous amount out of these little things. But what really is more underlying that aesthetically is the line. When
mm-hmm.
you're ice dancing, you're moving in a line, and people are tracking you, which is like a single vocal line, which many of your pieces are based around.
That's pretty observant, I have to say. I mean, for me, the most wonderful thing about skating in general, whether it's artistically or not, is that there is almost no beginning and no end. You just, once you push off, it's a movement that could keep going and going and going. It has this sort of feel of endlessness and smoothness. And there are no sharp corners. You can sort of make a sharp corner, but it's quite difficult to make a 90-degree angle in skating.
There are not 90-degree angles in your music.
Yeah, most of the time they're not. Yeah, unless it's a really strong ending with a stopped ending. But yeah, so I have I have a really great respect for the art of dancing in general, whether it's on ice or not. But on ice, I got a lot of discipline. I got a lot of joy and a lot of flow from doing that, and it was an incredible school, and it was most of all incredible fun, and it was great camaraderie among everybody, and it was one of those things where you had to get up at like 3:30 or 4 a.m. to be on the ice at 6 a.m., let's say, because it was an hour drive to get there. And yet when you're on the ice at 6 a.m. and the world is still asleep, you are just, this is one of those instances where you're completely happy. You're just with yourself, and you're practicing, and you're doing the same thing 5,000 times, but there's something about it that brings you happiness, and you don't even know why, because you should be cranky, you're tired, you're sore from the day before. It's not the ideal situation of being happy, but you just are.
You said to Terry Gross that your dream would have been to do a routine to Webern,
mm-hmm.
Or something like that,
yeah.
Something avant-garde. And of course, other people have their fingers in that process. And so most of what you skated to was, I don't know, show-tuney stuff. But then it occurred to me that you're kind of making your dream music now, in a way, there's a quality of Webern meets showtunes to a lot of your output.
Yeah.
Has the kind of difficult, nuanced harmonic language.
Berg meets Bernstein. Yeah, the problem with figure skating in general, for me, was that the level of musical taste was quite narrow. So I didn't have a choice all that much in choosing the music. I chose Gershwin or American in Paris, whatever I could, to make something that was still something I could stand behind. But ultimately, I would have loved to go really wild and do something new, which is, it's a sport. It's not, it's an art form and it's a sport. So that being said, I chose to not stay with figure skating for many reasons, and that was definitely one of them, because I knew that it's a limited artistic approach for me. And so at 19, I just dropped it and went into music full time.
By way of background, you had been singing in choirs as a boy soprano before that, and your voice, I don't know the term, it started breaking.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of when you went into semi-retirement.
Yeah. I played piano and guitar as a kid first, and then I joined this choir, and then I became a soloist in the choir, and that was all really fun. But at 12 or 13, I remember my voice wasn't behaving, and I was really upset. I think it's traumatic for most kids anyway, when their voice breaks and suddenly they have a really low voice. But I had a little bit more at stake, at least in my little world, and so I started sucking on cough drops and lozenges and all these. I tried to avoid it, but there was no way I could. So I just didn't sing for a while, and then it was at 17, I started a band with some schoolmates, and I started singing again, and it was a different voice, but it was still a voice.
What was this band like?
It was a trio with a clarinet player and a guitarist. And what we did, we adapted every show tune and every weird musical number or every film score that we could get our hands on, and did it for this trio with, props and with a set and it was very jokey and very fun and irreverent and ridiculous and absurd. And the musicianship in the band was very serious. The guitarist was a serious classical guitarist, and the clarinet player is a very good friend of mine still. He is a serious contemporary music clarinet player. So we were just doing, really fun stuff in really wacky arrangements. And, we did a lot of gigging with this band. It was very entertaining.
Also, speaking of fun, last night I learned tube and throat singing thanks to you.
Uh-huh.
Let me see if I can. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's good. Just stay with one vowel for a moment. Don't move so quickly.
Oh, okay.
So if you go... If you're moving slower in your change of vowels, you'll be able to narrow in on the overtone a little bit more. This was not actually a very good example either, but anyway, that's a fun thing. It's really easy to get to quickly, and then it's really hard. So it's easy to do it kind of a little bit, to start, and then it gets really difficult. I sang with a vocal quartet here in New York, Toby Twining Music. He's a wonderful vocal composer, Toby, and he had notated all the overtones, and I thought I was going to pass out because I'd done overtone singing, but not with that rigidity of actually hitting the fifth, the seventh, the minor third at a certain point. So that took an enormous amount of practice, and I probably cannot do that right now because it really is a specific skill that you have to keep up. You know, it's like anything else. It's like a Olympic sport. Yeah, it's fun. It's great to do in your bathroom where you have, you know, good reverberance. And it's easier for the most part for men to do that. Except I just heard this incredible Austrian overtone singer, Anna Maria Hefele. Have you heard her? She's just ridiculously amazing. Yeah, so that is, I sort of weave that into some of what I'm doing sometimes and use overtone singing as a different sound sonically within the texture of something else.
Even if you're not using loops or some electronic assistance, your vocals pretty often transform in startling and interesting ways. You've covered Kate Bush. You said that her song Running Up That Hill is about switching genders. She, of course, transforms her vocals often as well, and her vocals go to what, to me, I think, given the lyrics of the song, if I only could, I'd make a deal with God and get him to swap our places. And then the last lines are pitch shifted lower, as if it's like imitating a male vocal. As if it's like imitating a male vocal. When you shift your vocals, do you feel your perspective changing? Like you're singing a different character, your consciousness is changing?
No, I don't. I mean, character maybe, yes. It's sort of, I don't use the pitch shift that I have necessarily as a different person. Like now I'm a female, now I'm a male, with a lower voice. I don't think of it in those terms. I think of it more like sound. When I use that, I try not to be too cartoony or too literate with a pitch shift. It's really just a sound that's triggered vocally and has vocal quality, but is also an electronic sound and has something, that's not human in it, which is sort of a merging of the two, like a machine and a man at the same time.
A couple press pieces on you have used the word alien. How does that feel?
I mean, if it's a compliment, it feels good, and if they don't know what to do with me, then it's fine. I like alien. I have no problem with aliens. I think alien describes something that they have never heard before, or they're trying to say it's really futuristic, or it's not your normal singing. And for most people, alien idea comes from the movies. And the movies, what they do is they always put a lot of effects on aliens, which is one of my big pet peeves. Like an alien would come down to Earth and speak in a completely different reverb chamber and have a completely different EQing from the rest of humankind, which is so bizarre.
Can there be a peace between us?
You helped develop an alien language for Men in Black.
Yeah, I did. I didn't know it was Men in Black. I said, what is this movie? This is really a dumb scene. This like alien, or this guy's head opens up and there's an alien coming out of the head and then the guy's falling into a plate of pierogies. This sounds really stupid. I'm really embarrassed to be doing this. Please don't put my name on anything. This is ridiculous. And they said Men in Black. I was like, that is the dumbest title of all time. What is this? And then he said, well, it's produced by Steven Spielberg. And I thought then, this is going to ruin his career forever. This is, if only this...
To be fair, it is a dumb movie.
It's a good dumb movie.
Yeah.
It's a good summer dumb movie. But yeah, I thought it was just the stupidest thing. I couldn't make head or tails of it. Of course, I only had this one scene to do. So, and again, I can't tell what they did in the movie. I can't tell if they used my takes or somebody else's, and then put millions of effects on it to make it sound like I'm, in a underground sewage pipe in a submarine or something.
Well, let's talk about something that's more your style. Let's talk about your visual art, which I think is great. Like with ice dancing, but more so, because I haven't actually seen you ice dance. I hear this in your work. So this is, I love this one because it's technically a collage, but it's incredibly pared down. There are only actually 2 pieces of paper involved. When you first look at it, it seems it seems stark, and we'll pull it up on. You'll be able to link to it, but you're doing these really clever things.
I have to backtrack here for a second. So before I decided to become a singer or a musician, I wanted to be a painter. That was my goal all through my childhood, all through my teens. While I was skating, I'm going to move to Paris and become a painter or a sculptor. But painting was sort of where I was really at. And I realized that at some point I was going to be alone all day, drawing only from myself and only staring at either a blank canvas or a blank piece of paper, yada, yada, yada. So since I like working with other people and I really draw inspiration from working with other musicians, I then had this epiphany that, no, I cannot do that for the rest of my life, just to be by myself and only draw for myself. So I put that aside. Years later, I wanted to come back to something. I was still painting a little bit with watercolors and sketching and all that stuff that's fairly unmessy. And then I came to do collaging, which is a very cheap and easy way to work in composition. And the thing I like about collaging a lot is that you already have to deal with something that's there. So you either go through magazines or books, photo books, and you can, whatever you can find is a game. What you're talking about in this collage is actually all refuse. So the stuff that you see there is the backside of something that I initially wanted to do. So the guy leaning out of the frame, if you turn him around, he's perfectly cut out. But when you cut out something in a collage and you do it very cleanly, sometimes that's the least interesting thing of all, just to cut out a figure from a magazine or a book. And I realized that sometimes when I turn things over, they actually have more interest, because what's on the back of the magazine and the way I cut it out, sometimes, not always, has more interest. And in this series, I actually limited myself to 2 objects. That's the minimum. I mean, you could have one. I've done collages with just 1 piece, but 2 pieces and make a third one or something new is quite a challenge, and that was really fun.
But there are like 6 aesthetic ideas occurring.
Yes, and that's due to the fact that there's a lot of coincidence with the way I cut out the reverse of this guy, the figure. But you have to be open to that accident. You have to be open to seeing that. And that took me a while to realize. It's easier in music sometimes when you're improvising and you hear something that just happened to happen, and you can, you're like, oh my God, this is really good. Let's make a piece out of that. The fun thing with collaging is that you already, like I said, you already have something there. You're not starting with a white piece of paper.
So let's connect that to your music. In genre terms, you collage in a way. I think you combine things in a clean way that maintains the identity of what it is. You work with pre-existing material.
A lot, yeah.
Pre-existing pieces.
I tell you one more.
And you work with the sort of the layers of history and the connotations. Well, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So what I was going to say about collaging and the music, it's very easy in collaging, and most of the collages I see are way too cluttered for my taste. And it's very easy to cut out 29 eyes and 30 mouths and 15 noses and make a face out of that. And because there's a lot of it, it looks like, you've done something. And to me, that's the least interesting way of collaging. To me, it's really interesting to just pare it down to the absolute essential minimum, so you get something new from something that's very recognizable. So like we said first, you see half of a man, but it's really not a man. It's really the shape of the outline of the sky that merges with the outline of the desert. And the same is true in music, to take a song and do a million things to it and change it to 15 different meters.
If you shift the outline of a melody, of a standard, just like with that man who you see the silhouette of one man in one position, and then you see the printed inked man who's looking and leaning kind of out of the frame of the initial one.
Exactly.
That interplay between the two, that distance.
I think it's my job as an artist or musician to create more mystery, and especially with something that is so clean-cut, clear. Here's the song. Here's a version of True Love, let's say. How can I put mystery into a song that's been heard a million times, that everybody knows the lyrics, everybody knows it's in 3, blah, 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 blah.
While I give to you and you give to me true love, true love.
Trying to find the one thing or two things maybe that distinguish my version from anything else. And in jazz or in contemporary music, but more in jazz, I think it often happens that we just impose a will onto a song and then just have our way with it. And I do that to a certain extent, I'm sure, but I try to avoid just, I call it raping a song. Just like taking it and doing whatever you want with it without disregarding, any of the internal principles. And it goes back to often an attitude towards a song being less than, or a pop song is less than what I could do with it. I'm going to make this really hip and really, sophisticated. And that's not always a better choice. Sometimes the simpler way, or taking things away from something, would make it, for me, more interesting.
There is a hierarchy that exists culturally that can be frustrating when you're, as an artist, thinking in aesthetic terms or in terms of meaning. You've said everything is permitted, so a toy can have the same beauty as a human voice or a drum. Let's talk about one of your toy pieces, Static Still. You do, with a very simple premise, that like one of these minimalist, I hate the word minimalist, but one of these collages, at first you see, okay, here's a guy just standing at a microphone holding a little toy, so you make assumptions like regarding the tone of the piece, that it's going to be in some way goofy. But here are the lyrics. When will I be me, or am I me already? Am I all I can but just don't see, longing to be free of me, ready to be? And
am I all I can be and just don't see? I think there's a B missing.
Okay. I think you leave out the B in the second repetition. Maybe.
Really?
Okay. I'll defer to you.
Maybe I was drunk.
I'll defer to you. But then, but even that doesn't get what's happening, because the way the toy works is it's this kind of wind-up toy, and you're turning it, and it's creating just enough of a sort of chord underneath the melody, and there's two different chords the toy can play.
Do you want me to get it?
The toy? Sure.
Yeah.
Do you want to perform it?
No, you have it on record, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Theo is picking up the toy, but while he does, and he can still hear me.
Out of my endless drawers of toys. Oh, here it is.
So he is singing these existential lyrics while he's very evenly it's standing up straight and narrow, spinning this toy around. And then it goes into a wordless section, and then Theo himself begins to slowly turn in a circle, just like the toy is being turned, which, in connection with the lyrics, is poignant, because you by the act of you turning in a circle on stage, just like the toy is turning, you're suggesting ideas of determinism.
Well, it's a song that deals with yourself, with, again, this is sort of the pondering of, when am I fully evolved? When am I me? When does it end, like the search for who I am? So here's number one.
And you're going around in circles, I guess you could.
That's one of them, and the second one.
Am I all I can be and just don't see? Longing to be free of me, ready to be.
I just went through the toy store's toy box collection for, an hour and tried them all out and see what, sounded good together.
And then there's the connotation of being a small child with a toy. There's the distance between you, this just occurred to me now, but you as a man singing this line, am I all I can be? So that sense, maybe I am just a child compared to what I could become.
Yeah, I never thought of that. That's a very interesting way of thinking about it. Of course. Yeah, that's really smart, actually. I didn't think that far into it. I just liked the turning aspect of it and the repetition and I just like the sound. I think it's a beautiful sound. Period. Whether, I don't know what, whether it's coming from a toy or from a computer or from a piano, it's...
There's something about the turning around it makes me think of like a mechanistic universe, just planets spinning. Like, think of how weird it would be, given the themes of this, how weird it would be if someone was like singing a hymn, and then they just started slowly rotating. It'd feel kind of nihilistic.
I like the thing that it does to the sound too, because I'm singing into a microphone when I'm standing frontal, and then when I turn away and I keep singing, it changes the sound for the listener. So it's a change of sound that is very direct and very easy to comprehend.
Am I all I can be and just don't see? Longing to be free of me, ready to be.
It's
And
not
there's a
something.
connotation of singing into the void, sort of.
Of course, yeah, but there's also this, this very connected thing that people see and they hear. And I think that's being lost quite a bit these days with all the trickery that is going on in computers and in samplers, that we don't know what's going on, why the sound is changing, where it's coming from. People are sitting behind their screens, and there's such a divide between the source of the sound and the effect it has on the listener.
I think that it would be generally helpful with studio music today to do what have a transparency as they do in visual art. Just state the materials.
Mm-hmm.
This record was made with violin, viola, acoustic steel string guitar, and grand piano, and shaker, and just let people know that. I think that musicians get they compromise the whole structure of a piece by just overdubbing a single sound out of nowhere, out of left field. It doesn't.
Yeah, I think those are all philosophical decisions that you have to make for each record, for each song, for each piece, very consciously. Just because you can overdub, or just because you can use Max MSP or whatever it's called, doesn't mean you have to, or you should all the time. And I think for me, the connection I can build with an audience in live performance is more valuable to me than anything. So if I can use a toy instead of a sampler to make a strange sound, then that's preferable to me, because people see what I'm using, they see when the sound is made, they see me making the sound, and they receive the sound.
You've been doing this for long enough now. Have you noticed common ways in which your music affects people? How they change after they've listened to it?
I think they're surprised that it is, that they like it sometimes, that they're into it. I think it has to do with, number one, me being a singer. So it's a little bit easier for people that are normally not listening to adventuresome music or unpopular music to like it. And they're really surprised themselves that they would like something so out there and so strange, but it hopefully it moves them, or hopefully it gives them something that goes beyond just mere category. Oh, this is not the music I normally listen to, so I don't like it.
Would you rather talk about death or politics?
Death.
So you made a record not long ago called Songs in the Key of D.
I didn't make a record. It's not a record yet, or it's not a record period, unfortunately. But it's a collection
It's a song
of songs.
cycle.
Yeah, it's a song cycle. It's a collection of songs, some of them written by myself, some of them arranged by other composers, but it's all of my, meddling with music.
I love the song Take My Life. It has a loping, upbeat quality. It sort of takes the premise that we were talking about at the beginning, of this sort of joy that comes from stripping away language and ego to its extreme of, and it's you can have sex positive music as death positive, I think. Let there be no heaven state, no other God than silence. That's the last line, and the lines that precede it are about take my voice, fill my lungs with silence, becoming nude.
Into all your aching darkness to come. Let's exhale
Why was that the take on death for that song?
I was working on some Bach cantatas myself, and just practicing them and singing them, and I was just struck by how positive and how exuberant some of the language and, of course, the settings are, and how we think of death as this morbid, dreary moment. And I thought, well, what if I imagine it to be something of joy and letting go of all these heavenly, of all these earthly qualities that are weighing you down? Whether you want to believe in another life after this, is completely irrelevant in this case. It's just letting go of your physical body. So, and letting go readily, like saying, okay, I'm letting go of this, I'm letting go of that. Boom, boom, boom. List. And then all there is silence, and that's all you can really say. There is nothing. So that was really the idea behind the lyric and behind this piece, to be joyous, because, again, it's very easy to write death music that is dreary and heavy and somber, and all that is true of death, of course, but what else is there? And if you're making a project of songs about death, you've got to find something else. I mean, it can't just all be suicidal, dreary minor melodies. It's not going to end well.
You do have to admit that we live in a completely different era than Bach lived in now.
Of course.
You kind of skated over the difference in his expectation regarding an afterlife and your own expectation and the general modern expectation that is probably just silence. I'm not sure what the question is exactly here, but this is something I like about your music, that I really feel that it confronts head on the age that we live in. So on your latest record, Kurt Weill's Little Tin God.
That's not my lyric, though. I can't claim that. That's brilliant. I think it's Ogden Nash. Yeah, I mean, it's true today. It's the same. Can't say it any better than that.
But I feel like that, the death of God, the late 19th century, that's something that is still reverberating and that a lot of art hasn't sort of addressed, even though most philosophy has addressed it and most high art has addressed it. But it's still...
I have only questions about that because I have no answers to any of it. But the question is, how can art be so incredible when it's, Bach or, that time where you were giving everything to God and the, medieval anonymous artists too. But now most of Christian art is really tacky. It really has no lasting power. That's just a question. I have no answer to that.
I've honestly thought about devoting a whole episode to the question of what's wrong with Christian music. There is something wrong with it. And I think what it is that it's to be Christian in that sense today is to be in a willful denial about the existential can of worms that has opened in the Western world. And it's that I'm, that I'm summarily referring to as the death of God. And it's just not where the zeitgeist has been for over 100 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just don't, of course, that's not where the good artists are going to be.
Yeah. No, you're right. It just makes no sense right now. But it's
because you have to acknowledge the questions. These questions are...
Absolutely.
Do you feel like you grew up in Germany? Do you feel like these questions have been more digested and processed in Europe than in the United States?
No, I don't know. I grew up in a tiny little village, and I was an altar boy. I went to Catholic boarding school. I was, in church 2 to 3 to 4 times a week from, services. And still I came out not believing, and not Catholic. I mean, I'm Catholic still. I haven't left the church yet. But yeah, that's no, I don't think that's worked out in the Western Hemisphere, period. Like, we have not come to grips with that dichotomy of art and Christianity at all. I mean, no, I can't think of, maybe Arvo Pärt, but I don't know what his religious beliefs are truly, but I can't think of anybody else that I would go, oh my God, this is, it's worth praying for if you're listening to music like that.
Regardless of what's metaphysically real, the prayer is real, the hymn is real, the cathedral is real. But then again, I just think that the Western world can't maintain that attitude anymore after having gone through the world wars and Vietnam in America.
Well, if we're talking about Christian music in general, we have to include, gospel, and that's where I feel the really strong, moment, or the really strong voice is right now, or has been for the last 50 years. Meaning, when I hear a gospel choir, I always get completely stirred up, and I really, I get completely touched and seriously moved. So I think that it has shifted from, the art, song, Western, classical, music to maybe a different field. And I think that that's where Christianity or any kind of religiosity still is really powerful. Nevertheless,
you do exist, whether you want to or not, in a more postmodern milieu. Just the fact that you would say offhandedly everything is permitted so a toy can have the same beauty.
I mean, for me,
everything is permitted is such a loaded phrase that you would never hear out of the mouth of a gospel singer.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think we underestimate a lot. But I think for me, irony is really dead. So using a toy, like you mentioned earlier, as an, isn't this gimmicky fun? Ha 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 ha. I've seen those kind of performances, and they do nothing for me. I have no interest in that kind of irony or that kind of sarcasm, just holding up a toy and making it be ridiculous. That's not what I want to do. I want to make it really like, oh my God, this is really a beautiful thing. Suddenly you see something that is completely cheap and worthless or pedestrian, and suddenly you see something, even if it's small, something beautiful in it.
Is there anything... It's been like an hour.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Happy to talk longer, but...
yeah, no, then you have to edit more.
I don't mind it. It's a gift to be able to edit out my own ums and ahs, and I speak pretty slowly. Anything you'd like to say about A Clear Midnight, Kurt Veill in America?
In the crowd stands Mack the Knife, but he's not asked and doesn't know.
As we put this collection together, I insisted that we should have at least one of those really famous, super famous, Kurt Weill songs.
Mack the Knife.
Mack the Knife, yeah. So, I said, wouldn't it be great to have the song that Kurt Weill is known for on this record, on top of all the other unknown Kurt Weill songs? And, Kurt Weill is mostly known through Mack the Knife. But I wanted that version to be really creepy and really just completely bizarre and different from anything else you've heard with the that kind of marching band is not in there. So Julia and I fiddled around for an hour and came up with this very, very lugubrious, creepy arrangement.
Do you have a platonic view of songs? Like, there's a platonic ideal of Mack the Knife out there somewhere, and Kurt Weill just did one iteration of it?
No. I think he wrote what he wanted to write, and it's incredibly well written, and it's so popular and so great because of it to a certain degree. And then I come in, or Julia and I come in, and do something else with it and use it as a departure point for something else, very much like a collage. You take parts of it, you take the lyric and some of the melody, but then you create something else behind it so that it suddenly is completely new. Suddenly the lyric or the melody has a different background, or you cut it out just so, you add a few bars, so that suddenly you keep the integrity of something, but you add something else next to it to make it different.
It can be as simple in your collages as choosing a certain color to have as the background.
Yeah.
That contextualizes
Yeah.
everything.
I mean, I've done collages with just one piece where I cut out stuff inside the shape, so then you just see nothing but an outline. So that's really, sometimes it's what you leave out that's more important than what you fill in and glue on top and on top and on top, and 29 noses and 15 mouths, that kind of stuff.
That ability to subtract while knowing what you're going for is valuable and rare in this boisterous age.
Makes for a very large wastebasket, because you're doing that not just once and eureka, you have that one piece, but you have to do that more than anything else. It takes longer, and it takes many more cutouts and many more tries and many more failures to get to a one piece that really has that kind of a power.
It takes a lack of ego to, say, record a difficult guitar solo and then decide it just doesn't work compositionally and delete it. Most people, think about people do this in their lives and their Facebook feeds. If there's something someone did that took a lot of effort, they're going to make sure everybody knows. Mm-hmm. But to delete erase the signs of effort.
I did a recording with Ben Monder called Hydra, and the piece was so hard. I thought I would never learn it. It was so complex. It was probably the hardest music I've ever had to learn, and it was in 3 parts, sometimes in 4 parts. Which were completely unsupported and individual and blah 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 blah. And I thought, okay, well, after the recording, everybody will know how difficult this was. And it turns out it sounds really easy breezy. The piece in the end sounds just floating along. It's beautiful. And I almost want to put a disclaimer in the CD. This was hard, ! But that defeats the purpose, I guess. You want it to sound easy.
Thanks, Theo.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Anything else, of course, you want to say, feel free. Or any shout outs or
Say no to the Bush agenda.
I have to ask you, how do you feel about Bush having become a painter?
What? I don't even know that.
Oh my God. Okay, we have to do this.
What? Which Bush?
George W. Bush
No.
went into retirement and has become a painter.
Okay, you have to show me what they look like. When did you hear about this?
They leaked. I mean, he announced that he was doing it, and people were like, yeah, that's your retirement hobby. But it turns out he's doing it prolifically. And his emails were hacked, so some leaked, but some he's put up. Just scroll to the right. Okay, this is an exclusive. Theo Bleckmann, who wanted to be a painter as his first aspiration, looking at George W. Bush's paintings for the first time.
Oh, oh wow! Oh my God, I actually like this portrait. You know, Hitler was a painter too.
I know. It's kind of that's another layer of poignancy to Bush doing it. It's like he's done it all, and now there's nothing left for him to do but make pretty little paintings.
Besides being speechless, if this was framed properly and would be at the biennial or, you know, at some kind of art fair, you wouldn't blink twice. They're so strange. They are so weird. I mean, they're amateur paintings, yes, but they're almost weird enough to hang in a museum. Like this one with the shower. That is just the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. With the mirror, I mean, awesome.
That's a self-portrait.
It sort of has creepy appeal a little bit. The dogs are cute. Oh, I love them. Oh, they're so cute. Yeah, well, good for him. Let him draw. That's better than doing politics.
He looks happy.
Yeah. I'd rather he paint than, meddle in politics. So go right ahead, W. Paint away dogs and men in showers. I'm not going to go there. Whatever else he wants to paint. Fine by me.
Thanks.